Good evening.
Good evening.
So, hello, there you go. Hello, and good evening. Jesse Salinas here. I am Yolo County's assessor, clerk, recorder, and register of voters. So I do have a large title. So I'm here today wearing my register of voters hat. And since it is election season, it's usually the topic that people want to hear about. And so I'm very thankful to be here, and I want to be able to, first of all, say a big thank you to the League of Women Voters for helping to put this event on, as well as Woodland TV. Thank you for being here to record this. And of course, the Woodland Community Center, such a beautiful facility that we have here, right? In fact, as a little backdrop, before I came into this position, I spent some 5 years on the Parks and Recs Commission Board, actually commission here in Woodland, and as their chair of the Parks and Recs Commission. So this facility is near and dear to my heart, and I'm glad you could be here to enjoy this evening with us. So thank you for being here. So with that, I'd like to kind of focus on some of the key elements of what we're going to talk about, which is we made a transition to the Voters' Choice Act. And, my thought process here is that we're going to go through the presentation, and if in fact there are things that you would like to ask some questions as we're going along, feel free to do so. But I think I will make sure that we'll be having some Q&A as we go along. But I've also set time aside in the presentation for you to be able to ask questions afterwards. So as the flow goes, let's see how we go and see how it goes from there. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah, that's good.
All right. So I wanted to share with you about the timing of why we went to the Voters' Choice Act. And I'm going to do a flashback. And folks will remember in March of 2020. Remember those days? COVID hit, yes. It actually was March of 2020. And I remember it was the Monday before the March election when the news broke that we are in a pandemic. And I got a little bit of PTSD when I go back. A flashback is kind of like, oh, that was just such a dark time, right? Because we didn't know what was going on. It was all so new to us. And it definitely hit hard, very hard, in the elections office. And I share that with you because to give you a context of what polling places were like back in the day, if you recall, we had 96 polling places. And to give you a context, every polling place had to have at least 4 election workers. You can do the math. That's nearly 400. And then you have to have a waiting list because people do drop. Typically, we would have about a 2% drop of poll workers. So you kind of make that calculation. And even on the inspectors, we'd have about a 1% drop. So you always have to have your waiting list to be ready, right? You always have to be ready. What was fascinating about it was, if you recall back in those days especially, the election workers, I will say, were the more mature and experienced citizens of our society. Right? I mean, truly, that's what it was made up of. And so we found out that Monday that the pandemic hit, and we had, everybody, myself included, had a lot of fear about what's going to happen next. How safe is it to be around people? And we started to get calls saying, I'm not going to show up for a polling place. And to give you a context, so in terms of our poll workers, we had about a 6 to 8% drop. Okay, normally there's like a 1% drop. We had a 6 to 8% drop that Tuesday on that primary election. Now on the inspector side, those people who are even more experienced and have been around and are leads at those polling places, we were experiencing an 8 to 10% drop. Normally it was 1, maybe 2%. So think about those numbers. When you are actually planning for up to 2%, 3%, even 4%, because we are always trying to prepare for a worst case scenario, it was double our worst case scenario. So what happened is we somehow managed to survive that March 2020 election. And I say that because it was survival. I literally was going out to my staff up in the assessors, thank goodness I wear all these different hats. I'd go to my assessor staff and I'd say, I need a poll worker at this site. We only have 2, and there's somebody that's the first voter that had to be asked to hang out and be there for somebody to help them out until we could get more people. And I would go around the assessor's office asking, would you be willing to go out there? And I have to give props to our assessor staff. They're like, Jesse, absolutely, let me shut down the computer. Where do you need me? And they'd run out to whatever polling place we were short. And so we got through that election. And afterwards, once we certified that election, I had staff. And for those of you who don't know it too, my staff are here and I want to give them a shout out. So Armando Salud is my deputy of elections. Armando, you want to give him a And Catherine Campos, who's also, she's my deputy clerk recorder. She's also my public information officer, so she wears multiple hats as well. Well, I'll share with you what ended up taking place is that we started calling. I said, we need to find out who's going to show up for November, right? That'll give us an idea of how hard we have to recruit. Well, of the almost 400 people that we normally would have had, we had a commitment of by 50 people. I just said that is not good. We're going to have to try a different kind of strategy, right? So as a result of that, I was in constant discussions with the state. This is called the Secretary of State. It's really oversees the elections operations. And everybody was kind of in a panic because that was a statewide issue. And so what ended up getting developed is something called a VCA-like model. That's what we implemented for the November 2020 election. It was similar to a VCA, and it was called a VCA-like because we didn't have to do 11 days, we only had to do 4 days, and there were some modifications that were made. But to make that change, we actually had to completely change how we run elections. We had to have vote centers, we had to have these ability to go to any of these vote centers and be able to get whatever ballot you need at any of these sites, which was a totally different way of doing business, and other requirements that were needed. And the technology had to change, everything had to change. And the other counties that did that typically needed about a year to 18 months to make that transition. We had 6 months, less than that. And so we were on high, we talk about an intense period for our staff to make that kind of transfer, that type of transfer and transition to another model like that. Well, I am proud to say that November of 2020, our turnout, voter turnout for that election was 83%. I went back historically because the numbers were so shocking. I just said, well, let's go back and write for our staff. I had them dig through the record to say, what was the, going back like 20 years. Let's just go back last 20 years to see what the numbers were. And you look at the historical data, and it shows for those presidential elections, it's at 76, 77%, consistently. For us to jump up to 83%, big deal. Yes, it was. It was a big deal. So proud of the work that our office did, and even statewide, the numbers were high. They were 81%. So, but we outdid the state in terms of our performance, and we are so proud of that. And I share that with you because that's how we went through. Even the recall election was a voter-like, VCA-like type of model. But we had another successful operations of how it went. So at that point, we had already bought the equipment, we had already made this transition, and we just had to tweak it a little bit more to become an official Voters' Choice Act county, which is what we did in 2022. And you can see by the development of that, it was in 2022, and we had actually, as part of that, you have to do what's called an election administration plan. And boy, let me tell you, that is not a small feat. We're gonna have to figure out how we try and modify it, because right now, our election administration plan is over 200 pages. It's a lot of important, good data, but we have to figure out, is there a way to kind of streamline it so it's a little bit more readable, but it has all this incredible, valuable information. And staff put a lot of time and energy, blood, sweat, and tears, right, into that document. But it's an amazing document. So we had to have it approved by the Secretary of State's office. They did, they approved it. And what we have now is a Voters' Choice Act model, which is what we are operating currently. So, any questions on the backstory on that and how we came to a VCA model? It's kind of a fun story, right? Because there's a reason why. It wasn't just Jesse just decided he was going to do this. No, I was looking at the model from a distance. It was the pandemic that expedited that. So, and as you look at these elements that have taken place, so in 2016 is when the SB 450 bill passed for Voters' Choice Act. Again, we fully adopted it in 2022. And then AB 37 came about, which was a key initiative, or a measure, I should say, that was passed by the legislature that required that everybody be mailed the ballot, the mail. And it expanded the in-person to early voting as well. And the other thing that it did is it really made sure that we had to be able to provide secure locations for ballot drop boxes and casting at these vote centers, and really just provide that opportunity for voters that are increased accessibility. So what you have, when you look at the VCA model, we actually have a requirement by the law that says for every 10,000 registered voters, you have to have a voters vote center. So if you do the math, if you have under 120,000, which we are under 120,000, that means we have to have 12 vote centers. So that's why there's currently 12 vote centers in Yolo County. Now what we've also done is we've created a mobile vote center, because what I heard as we rolled this out in the rural communities, they said, Jesse, you have a vote center in Woodland, you have vote centers in Woodland, in Davis, in West Sacramento, you can put one in Winters, you have one in Esparto, but the rest of us. So when the opportunity came to get some state funding, we actually purchased a mobile vote center. It's a mobile unit. And so we can go out to the rural communities and we provide that in-person experience for those in the rural community. So that's something we kind of went above and beyond. It's beyond the minimum requirements for us, but we felt it was important to include that. And on top of it, the drop boxes, the ratio for drop boxes is for every 15,000 registered voters, you need to have a drop box. And so for us, our requirement is to have 8 to 9. You can see we have 15. And what we have done is we've partnered not only with schools, the university, our partnership with the university, both as a vote center and as a drop box, became the model for the state. Because we've had huge success at UC Davis, but they were so keen on us having a drop box, a 24/7 drop box, and a VCA, a Voters' Choice Act center there on campus, that the UC presidents actually did a big signing. They replicated what we did at UC Davis across all the UCs. So we are an example of what can be done well with partnering with the UC Davis system. So on top of it, what I wanted to share with you is our drop boxes. The other thing we did that's unique is we actually have drop boxes inside of nugget markets. Have any of you used a drop box? Raise your hands. Okay, we've got a couple of, quite a few people that have used it. Wow. So we get a lot of people that just love being able to go to the store, go shopping, and drop off their ballots, right? So that's been a huge, huge partnership. And I want to give a shout out to, if you're watching this out in the Woodland TV, that our Nugget Market partners have been fantastic. But we've also Food for Less, which is connected to Nugget Market. So we have one at that location, La Superior, here in Woodland. It's a community that often is forgotten, and we want to make sure we are reaching out to that community. And we have some others in other markets across the county that we have, and some other drop boxes. Yes?
There have been concerns expressed in other communities about the security of drop boxes. So can you speak to that?
Sure. So the drop boxes are actually meeting state code. So they are very different. So the discussions first came up about drop boxes, in my mind, I have to tell you, I was thinking, the boxes that you go and you want to drop off your mail in the post office and you put it down and you slide that in, they're like, no. That's not how these are going to apply. So if you go look at these drop boxes, not only is there a small sliver for you to put in your ballot in the envelope, there's not an ability for you to throw in a can of soda or whatever to ruin it. So it's designed to protect the envelopes. On top of it, they are secured because the actual location, depending if it's indoors or outdoors. If it's indoors, we actually will chain them and lock them up to that facility so it's in a secure place that you just can't run out from the store. You can't go in a nugget and carry them out, so you won't be able to do that. On top of it, those that are outdoors are actually bolted to the ground. So we had to get special permission, and I will give again a shout out to UC Davis because the UC system isn't always so open and flexible, but our partners at UC Davis have been amazing. When we said we'd like to have a 24/7 drop box on campus, they go, okay, where do you want it? And we go, well, we want it so it's accessible, easy to get to, and where they put it is right across from the tennis courts, over by where the bus area goes in there, but people can drive in and pick it up and access it. That is a massive, huge drop box that is bolted to the ground. So all our outdoor ones, we actually had to make sure they're bolted to concrete and are secure, so people can't just run out. Yes?
Well, do all of your drop boxes have security cameras watching them?
So no, they do not. And the reason they don't is if they're outdoors, if there's not a camera out there, we actually did some research to what it would cost, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to put an outdoor camera situation out to be able to monitor, because there's another county along the Central Valley that's looking to do that, and the cost is.
Are there some locations that actually have cameras watching?
So, good question. So the nugget markets, where you'll notice, for example, they're close to the cashiers in the front part. So we've never had to ask them, thankfully. We've never had an issue where somebody tries to break in or do something with those ballot drop boxes. But those always have eyes on them, and when you are in an indoor one, has to have eyes on it, and that's why if you look at the nugget market ones, they are towards the front and available, so people are able to see that at the front. So they do have cameras, obviously, in nugget market. We've never had to ask them for permission to see that, because we've never had an issue here in Yolo County. So I'm always positive, and I'm an optimist. I don't think we will, because they're secured, and we've had nothing but positive experiences with them. Thank you both for your questions. So, if I may, I'm going to kind of move on to the next one because there's still quite a bit to cover. So with that, so protecting our democracy, ensuring integrity with the elections, really I want to really highlight that there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation that exists out there. And I'm going to go ahead and flip this off if I may. And I say that because this is a huge issue. And it is one of the most critical issues in our society right now. And I'm going to help distinguish between what misinformation is and disinformation. Misinformation is somebody that may be well-intentioned and is trying to provide information that's just incorrect. And a good example, there was an organization, a nonprofit organization, that was sending out information to voters saying, you're no longer registered. Well, they used old data to send out those text messages and emails, and it was wrong because they didn't have the latest information. That wasn't malicious. It was trying to help voters, but it was misinformation. Disinformation are really individuals or even larger entities, and I would say even government entities, that are doing work to undermine our democracy. And they're purposely giving wrong information to mislead voters and to fundamentally undermine our democracy. So there's a real difference between misinformation and disinformation. So when you hear people say, no, that is disinformation, you know the distinction of what we're talking about, right? Misinformation, again, I just think people they have good intentions. They just are not providing accurate information. And I really want to highlight the fact that that's why we are the information, the real source. You want to come to the elections office. And you'll hear a little bit more about this as we go in this presentation, because it's really important for you all to understand the distinction between the two. All right, so with that, be vigilant in terms of your information and what you're listening to. If something doesn't seem quite right, cross-reference it. Always check to our office, because we will be the source that will tell you if that's true or not. So I want people, hopefully out watching on this TV, that we are the source for this information that you can depend on. Okay, so how do we do this? How are we building this clarity of information? So a lot of it is transparency. So you've probably seen our office puts out a lot of press releases, because we're trying to get information out. We're pushing out information. We're constantly, sometimes a couple of times a day, but at least a couple of times a week at the very least, whenever something, a key milestone is coming up, the logic and accuracy test that'll be coming up, we're going to talk about that, and how we give people an opportunity to see it firsthand. Whenever we have any kind of event that's important, we want to share it with you like this. We actually put a press release out about this and shared about this coming out, right? So you can all have a chance to have all this exposure. So we do that. I do interviews, and if I'm not available, Armando will do an interview with one of my staff. So we do interviews, a lot of interviews, and not just with the newspapers, but with television stations, whoever would like to interview and get information, we do that. Radio stations, we do that as well. We've also done some op-ed pieces. In fact, the op-ed piece, I don't know how many of you saw the op-ed piece that we wrote explaining why election results can take additional time. So that op-ed piece, I laughed because it got published it got published not only in the Daily Democrat, in the Enterprise, Davis Enterprise, the Winters Express, the West Sacramento Ledger. It got even press on the Sacramento Bee. And it was actually, usually we don't get a lot in Yolo County in terms of coverage, but what we've been told is, no, that was well written, incredibly comprehensive. We spent a lot of time writing that op-ed piece, and are pretty proud of the work. So much so that other registrars across the state asked for a copy of it, because they're going to use elements of that, because it really tries to explain how the process works. So we've done op-ed pieces. Again, we always welcome people to observe all our processes. And we also have some GIS election mapping. You know what GIS is? Geographic Information Systems. It's those beautiful maps that you see. So one of the things that we're proud of is we are actually one of the best at doing that. We were actually awarded through the United States Election Assistance Commission for the work we did with both with the GIS mapping and the work we do in our administration of the election. So they gave us a national award, and they're a nonpartisan group. So again, transparency. Outreach. Well, you know, I've tried to do a lot of outreach. My staff does a lot of outreach. You see us in the community. And one of the things we're really excited about is we are partnered with the Haas Junior Fund, and we're doing outreach to encourage voter turnout in elections. We piloted that in the March election, and we're expanding that. And we have a number, I think it's like 8, is it not 8 nonprofits that we're partnering with in this? 9? Okay, so 9 nonprofits that are actually we're partnering with in this coming election. And the whole purpose is, again, get the vote out, do outreach, encourage people to participate in our election process. And then, in 2 days, we had our Youth Empowerment Summit. A shout out to the League of Women Voters, yes. They're helping, and they've been a partner for some time, number of years now, where we're reaching out to high school students. And right now, we're expecting to have over 150 students that are going to show up. And yes. It's in partnership with UC Davis. Again, great partnership. So we've had a wonderful partnership. It's going to be at the Art Ballroom. And the thing that we do is we encourage students to, A, understand about the importance of voting. We give them a mock election, so they actually see an official looking ballot that they get to vote on and experience things on. But the third element that we do is we let them talk to elected officials. And we have nearly 30 elected officials that are going to show up on Wednesday to talk to these students. And we create these roundtable discussions to have conversation, because my fundamental belief is our democracy is dependent on the young people wanting to be engaged and to participate. And if we can get them excited about, hey, there are issues I care about that I can talk to my local elected official, then they're gonna wanna vote and be engaged. And to me, that's the future, right? Because we want people to trust in our democracy, to be engaged, and to really get excited about voting. So yes, that's my goal, is to get students and young people excited about voting. Thank you. Two other items I want to talk about on the outreach piece. So we're also working with, again, the U.S. History Project and Social Science Project at UC Davis, Baylor University out of Texas, and the Yolo County Office of Education. And we've helped to redesign a curriculum for seniors that focuses on, again, civic engagement, voting and participating. It's also going to teach them about the importance of local government. It's incredible how people don't understand how important it is and how it impacts you every single day, right? But we're going to teach them about that because we're teaching about the 3 branches of government, but we're not teaching about how important local government is. And the third element, the third unit of this curriculum is about media literacy. When you see something, just because you see it on a TikTok video doesn't make it accurate. So how do you double check it? How do you find reliable sources and cross-reference it? Because it becomes, the algorithms teach you to keep watching what makes fun, and it may or may not be accurate. So how do we teach the next generation to think, be a little bit more critical thinking in terms of the social media piece? So that's the other piece that we're doing. So it's a pretty innovative project that we're working on, and those are the partners we have in place. And lastly, what we call the VAC and LAC. So Voter Accessibility Advisory Committee and the Language Accessibility Advisory Committee are those 2 items. And that's part of the requirement of being a Voters' Choice Act. You have to create these committees that allow you to reach out to different communities and engage them. So we have that. And if you know of anybody, I'm looking out, any of you know anybody that wants to be involved with a VAC or a LAC, a language or accessibility and disability type of grouping, please reach out to staff, because we're always looking to recruit and find people that want to participate. That's part of our outreach. Of course, we're nonpartisan. We don't take any sides. We sit there and we provide a fair and balanced election. That's our job, is to do outreach and to share information and allow people to vote. And then last, the secure part is really, we knew there was a need related to this misinformation and disinformation issue that we talked about. So over a year ago, I started really pushing the county that I wanted us to move to a .gov. Because before that, we were a .org. It could be any organization, right? Even if it said Yolo County .org. That's different than a .gov. You have to go through all these security protocols to get the label of a .gov. So we started pushing it, and it started in our office, in the elections office. So the entire county now has transitioned to a .gov. So when you end and you go YoloCounty.gov, you know it's us. Nobody else can have that website but us, which means more security, more certainty in the information you're getting. So that was a huge, huge, significant change. And it took a while to get there, but we did. Then in terms of the other security thing that we've done is we've remodeled our elections office, and you will see some plexiglass and more of a secure door. Before, I had a door that was about this high that just swung in and out that people could just walk into. And I said, I just want to make sure my staff is safe and secure. And we were able to identify some state and federal dollars to pay for that security upgrade. So it's still beautiful, it's still plexiglass, you can see everything and engage and talk, but it keeps my staff a little bit more secure for this election. So again, we are the trusted source. I want you to know and have confidence in that. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. So let me talk about that. I touched upon it earlier. That 2020 election was 83%, while the statewide was 81%. But look at the number and how much higher we are in the primary. Unfortunately, it was incredibly low turnout, right? It was statewide 35%, which is sad. I'm just going to tell you, it was just, even though I'm not thrilled with 46%, because we have so much work to do, I want to see that number, how far above the statewide average we were. That's 11%.
100%.
That's huge. I'm so proud of our community. They had issues that they wanted to vote on. My staff did an amazing job of, I think, making the election accessible and effective. In fact, we had our fastest certification ever because we were able to get things produced. The lower volume helped out with that. Just FYI, there's new legislation that just passed that says we'll have to wait until 28 days later to certify. That just got signed today. So even if we get done early, we can't really certify until the 28 days after the election. That just came out today, literally. So hot off the press, that just got signed by the governor. Yes.
Why the delay?
So the argument, just for the record, I would have liked to us whenever we finish. But I think the argument was there's people that you're trying to capture, verify their signatures, and sometimes you need more time to be able to track people down and get them to solve that problem. Because if a signature is either not on the envelope or it's not matching, the envelope is being challenged, the ballot's being challenged. So we have to reach out to those communities, the individuals that ballot is associated with. So what this does is it creates an extended timeline for us to try and resolve those. And essentially that was the driving impetus behind that. But for us, if I'm done, and we've gone through all that process and I'm done at 21 days or 24 days, I'd like to be able to certify, but now we won't be able to until 28 days later. Yes?
What's the average national, or does every state have a different number of days?
So it all varies, because some states have a completely different model. So some states don't have as much vote by mail as we do. Remember I just said in the beginning, everybody gets mailed a ballot. That isn't true. I mean, when I say gets mailed a ballot, they get prepaid postage to mail it back, right? So people, in fact, I was just talking to an individual, I won't mention their name. I was just talking to an individual yesterday and said, Jesse, why are you moving this one issue of this one vote center, and it impacts this community? And their comment to me was, that's going to impact. I go, they can actually still use the mail. They can drop off that ballot in the mail. And that person said, but it's going to cost 35 cents. I go, no, it's not. It's actually free. And they looked at me and go, what? Yes, no, it's prepaid postage. So they just have to fill it out and drop it in their mailbox. If they want to go to a drop box, they can, but they don't even have to put a stamp on it anymore. And that was somebody who, quite frankly, is fairly savvy, but didn't realize that we were giving everybody prepaid postages. So it is important, and every state is different. Some say you can only vote in person, some have, you have to be back in the day, before that law passed, you had to be signed up to be like a permanent vote by mail or make a special request.
Yeah.
And other states still have that, but that's not the case anymore in California. So you can't, it's apples to oranges to compare. And so when people say, well, look, they're doing it in that state, why are you doing it here in California? It's because the rules are different. We have to abide by the rules that are here in the state. Yes?
Has there ever been correlated, like the number of candidates running or the number of measures on the ballot versus how many people vote?
So the question is it the number, the size of the ballot? So I want to clarify, everybody understand, she's asking if the size of the ballot, all the measures, a lot of candidates, does that have an impact on turnout and people's participation? So there are studies that show down ballots items are not voted on as much as the high end ballots. So people have voter fatigue the longer the ballot. So there are studies that show that. And in fact, you should know that there are people that in a presidential election only vote for president. They don't vote for anything else. That's a choice that people have. That's why I'm so emphasizing the importance of local government, because there's important races that are happening at the end of the ballot that are really important, that impact people every day. But yes, that voter fatigue does happen depending on the size of the ballot. And we do know that the legislature and the initiative process, especially the initiative process, does put a lot of state measures on. So we have a number. Thankfully, the ballot is not going to be this big this time. We actually got it. It's going to be 17 inches in height. It's 11 by 17 but we got it all onto one ballot. Yes, because the moment you go to 2 ballots, or, it's hard, especially if it's a big ballot, right? So it's a good question. Yes, it does have an impact. But you see the numbers, right? Our turnout, we're trending well in Yolo County, and we just have an amazing community that gets engaged and involved. So, so the other thing is, and I should kind of just throw this out, is that I do have a new kind of role that I'm doing right now, and it's the new role as the statewide president of the California Association of Clerks and Election Officials. So, thank you. So that's given me different responsibilities, so discussions on policy, so hopefully some of the items that are related to the Voters' Choice Act. In fact, we were on a committee conversation on this topic because I think there's opportunities for refinement on the act. I think there's a lot of amazing qualities about it, but there's also elements that I think can be more effective and more efficient moving forward. So we're really going to work on continuing to improve the model moving forward. That's our goal, right? But we have to be able to work with the legislature and other statewide entities like the League of Women Voters and others as we move forward on that. So I know when we start to have these kinds of examples, we really want to be able to highlight the importance of listening to the community and really getting it right. So that engagement is so important. So let me do a little bit of Mythbusters here. So we're going to go into this little mode because, I'll ask the question will come out. I turn in my ballot and I won't ever know if it has been received or even counted. I do get these questions. My staff gets that all the time. And the answer is, it's a myth. There's something called the Where's My Ballot. How many of you have used that? Can you raise your hand? Ho, ho, yes, almost all of you have. So, and those of you who haven't, I want to encourage you to do that if you haven't. So what's neat about the Where's My Ballot is that you can track that ballot as it's being mailed. So even if you put it in the mail, in the post office, when it gets to the post office, they tell you we got it, and when it gets delivered to our office, you can be notified of that, and when we process it, you'll be notified. It can send you a voicemail, it can send you a text, it can send you an email, whatever it is best for you, it'll provide you that information. And that has been invaluable, because people want to know, what's the status? And even if we have an issue, as I told you, sometimes the signatures may not match, or you may have forgotten to sign it, we will say in the messaging, hey, there's an issue with yours. And we will follow up and we'll reach out to you to try and resolve it. Part of that 20-day extended thing, right? Because there's something we have to be able to wait to give a response. And we won't be able to actually say we're about to shut the door on that option. It has to be 2 days before that before we can actually do that. So, but we announce all that. We put out information, press releases, as I was saying earlier. We do a lot of social media posts. So if you haven't followed us, you're going to hear more about that post that Catherine is in charge of making sure all of that goes out well. So I want to, if you haven't signed up, you go to where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. And again, you can get all your follow-up information, transparency of tracking your ballots. So here's another one. When volunteers are collecting ballots, they can do whatever they want with the ballots. There are people that think that, oh yeah, they're not counting my ballots, they just throw it off to, no, that's not true. The truth is there's always a chain of custody with ballots. Collecting from the ballot drop boxes, we always have a team of 2. This year we're actually trying to create a team of 3. And so by law, we only need 2. But we're going to try and expand that a little bit more, especially for this election. So as long as we have our volunteers that are willing to work with us and do it, right now I just talked to Jack, our person in charge of it. And he says, Jesse, we got our teams in place. So that's straight off the press as well. So we have, and if you haven't volunteered, we can always use waiting list people. Remember I told you about that? We're big into backups. So, we just want a plan B. So let me give you another Mythbuster. Whomever can turn in a vote-by-mail ballot, there is no verification. So, signature verification is done on every vote-by-mail ballot. And signatures are compared within each of the person's voter file. So we have a file, and I'll tell you, until I walked into this position, I didn't realize how much comprehensive review is really taking place on that. So all of our staff that reviews signatures are trained. There's a special signature training with somebody who is an FBI training and being able to provide comprehensive training on what it takes to see a signature and how you can verify it and the signals that it's a valid signature or not. But let me walk you through that process, because what will happen is we'll have these ballots that come in, and if you ever wanted to see it, I want to invite all of you, and even those of you at Woodland TV Land, to be able to come. And you'll see things start to pick up the last couple of weeks of October, because that's when ballots will start to pick up and come in. And we have this amazing process where we have these trays that are color coordinated, so as ballots first come in, it'll tell us they're just arrived, they need to be scanned. And there's this color coding that it'll be scanned by this machine, we call it the Agilis. It is a very expensive machine that is $250,000, almost $250,000 machine that is goes through and it scans these envelopes and it captures the signature. It just happens like that. And it's when you get a chance to come and see it firsthand, it's kind of fun. You remember the days when you were a little kid and you were playing with those cars that raced around the track and you saw them going around, how fun that was? It's kind of like that. It just flies around this little track and drops them into a bin. And what it does is it captures the signature. And it is able to look at that digital signature, and it has an ability to compare it. Software compares it to what the signature is on file. If it's an exact match, then it says, that's fine, that signature matches. What we have found out is that the threshold that we have really makes it hard to get all of them. In fact, only 20 to 25% is approved by that, because I want to be super cautious in terms of the signature match. So literally when we were putting the meter on its ability to read the signatures and how tight of a verification it was going to be, the testing was, we did 100 of these envelopes and had Armando and another staff person say, only when you approve all of these 100 is that the threshold I want it to be at. So I want to have 100% confidence that you would have approved those signatures for us to set it at that level. And so that's why only 20 to 25% right now. So although I have to tell you, with software advancing so quickly, that may change in time because things are happening very quickly with AI and everything else. But right now it's between 20 and 25%, which means the rest of them get put into another category that requires a review of staff. So we have line staff that'll do the bulk of the reviews. Then, if that's still challenged, it has to have another set of eyes to review it. And that's when it gets to an Armando or another staff person named Annette or Melinda, some of my folks who have been seeing tens of thousands of signatures in their career. They're very experienced, and they will evaluate if in fact there's still a problem with this signature. So there's this third level of review. And if there's still a problem, then that's when we do the challenge and we send information out to the voters and say, hey, we've got an issue with this signature. And we give them the opportunity to correct that issue. So I wanted to share with you because that's the detailed process of all these signatures. And so if something is not legitimate and it's somebody who just tried to forge it, it won't match because they won't know the signatures that we have on file because we have access to that. And we not only have access to the most recent ones, we can go back and see historical type of signatures. So we can see how things even evolve over time. Yes?
In registering new voters and senior people,
there you go. Yes.
they're concerned, well, my signature is changed, and so I did view your process, and so I encourage them. They have years of your signature so that if you change your signature slightly, they'll know. So.
Absolutely. In fact, that is true. You will have, again, we have a whole history of signatures, right, that goes back. So as your signature evolves, we'll see that evolution. The other thing that we also have the ability to do, and I share this because I had a family member who actually broke her arm, and it was her arm that she could not sign with. And so, but there's a form that you can actually fill out and have to have a witness, so I witnessed it, and they were able to sign to the best of their ability with a funny kind of X mark with using their offhand. And they were able, and I was able to say, I know this is actually this person that I'm validating that this is them. They just have a unique situation that happened. It was only for that one election. Once her arm healed, she got her normal one, but we can make accommodations disability-wise to assist, and that's required by law too, that we have to be able to accommodate people. And you have a question, yes?
Can I come in and see what my signature looked like when I did it a million years ago? Remind
Absolutely.
myself?
You yourself can see the signatures, right? Because people, so I've had elected officials saying, Jesse, but my signature has changed. And I go, yeah, come and look, you'll see, we've been tracking it. For every election, we've seen, even as far back as our records go, and it goes back pretty far, we can see that, yeah, you used to sign like this, now you sign like this, and they'll see it. So that evolution is pretty neat, absolutely, yes.
When a voter registers to vote, does your office run a check against any other government databases to ensure that the information on the voter registration is accurate?
So this information that we get, some of it is coming from the DMV. So a lot of that information actually, so now there's the new motor voter registration piece, right? So when you sign up, the bulk of registrations that we get are people that are registering from the DMV because it's part of the process. However, people can do their own, there's two other options, right? They can do online and they can do their own registration online through the Secretary of State's office, and we tell folks, absolutely. The other option, of course, they can fill out the paperwork themselves. So there's there's paperwork. Some people want the old school way of doing it on a piece of paper. They can do that, and they can even do it using the conditional voter registration. So there's different elements in how you do that, and the big one is that you see us using a lot is information that has either been transferred into the Secretary of State's office, through the DMV, or people directly into the DMV.
So if someone were to register a vote and they make a mistake on their form and they give them a social security number, it's not completely accurate because they put a wrong number on there or something, would your office pick up on that?
So you have to understand that, yes, but if there's a one that's already, like let's say they put a number and somebody already has that number,
Yeah.
that's going to be like, whoa, wait, there's already a Jim. I see Jim Smith in the back. We already have a Jim Smith that's here that has that social. Something's wrong here, right? And so we're able to flag it. So yes, we are able to, when there's issues, and you'll see it, there are people that make mistakes. And usually what we have discovered is most of the issues that have come to our attention, nearly all of them, 99.9% of them, people just make honest mistakes, and that's to include people who have, some have accidentally almost tried to vote twice, and oftentimes it's an individual who is voted by mail, and they get excited that election's happening, and they walk into a vote center to vote, and we're like, okay, you can vote provisionally because we won't let them, that's part of the process, we won't let them vote get another ballot, because we'll have on record that they may have already voted. And so we have this whole process for these conditionals and provisionals, and we will stop it. And look at that came right off. We will stop it from actually being counted, and we will actually share with the District Attorney's Office the list and the Secretary of State's Office, people who've tried to vote twice. Those are, by and large, are individuals that, for sake of life, have not quite remembered things the way they used to, and they forgot. So that's the vast majority. Yes?
Say that the process of challenging the signature, the first and the initial verification by the machine and and you go through all of those.
Yes.
About how long does that take? How many days, how many whatever to go through?
So it depends on the volume, right? Because if it's after the election, we're still processing a large number of ballots that are still coming in or have been dropped off on election day. What you will look by the data is this huge amount of people that wait to election day to drop off their ballots. So that's why it's called the canvass period. We spend the day after the election kind of cleaning up and organizing ourselves, and then the day after that is when we start doing the canvass, and we start going through all of those items that you're talking about, and all those vote by mails that technically can come in up to 7 days later as long as they're postmarked by election day. Plus, they can even come in a little bit later than that if they're being sent in from another county. So it takes us a while to process all those, and now because of this new law, we have to wait until the 28th day to certify. So typically, if people respond quickly, like if we've challenged it and it's come to that point, typically it goes pretty quickly. Because once we have the information, we validate it, we put it through, and it's done. The hardest part is people don't always respond to our outreach efforts, because we'll send them, if we have an email, we'll send it, but otherwise we have to contact them via mail. And if they don't respond, then that's sometimes where people's votes actually don't get counted, because if they don't respond to rectify the issue, their ballot doesn't get counted. But it's a good question, very good question. So let me look, we're going to try and be respectful of our time here. So Mythbusters, elections can be hacked, elections are not secure, and results can be altered. That's a myth. The truth is that none of our election equipment is connected to the internet. So we have our scanners and our tabulation machines, and I want to qualify the difference, because if you come to see, and again, I invite you all, the scanners are the ones that get the ballots, and it's a scanner that scans the images. It's not doing any tabulation, it's just scanning the images. And you can see it. In fact, one of the things that I shared already with the group that I spoke to recently is that we also have to do adjudication, which means if something is not clear on the vote, we have 2 sets of eyes that review it and assess what the intent of the voter is. And we have to take out all the Mickey Mouses and the Donald Ducks that people vote. And it's true, they do. You think we're kidding? They do. People put in Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and others. So we can't count those because they're not a certified approved candidate. So we have to do that. What we've done is we put these large screens, because before they were on monitors that you'd look over our shoulder, but we just are in the process of hooking up large screens, 43-inch screens that are going to be up on the wall, so that people can stand back a little bit and still clearly see what we're doing. So that's part of what we're doing. But those scanning machines are not hooked up to the internet. On top of it, when those scans are done, I have staff that walk over to another computer that's behind a locked cage. They make sure to open up the cage, they plug it in, and that's the machine that does all the tabulations. It turns those scanned images into the actual count, right? So you know how many this presidential candidate got versus this presidential candidate. And that's the calculation. That machine also is not connected to the internet. So when people ask, oh, somebody can go in and hack, no, you can't. That is not something, none of those machines are hooked up to the internet. And in fact, that information is then, through a secure portal, sent information directly to the Secretary of State's office. We push it up on our website, and because our website ends in .gov, thank you. Because it ends in .gov, you know you're coming to the right site with the right information, right? So it all ties together. You all are seeing how it meets. And then, you had a question?
I got a couple.
Okay. Well, do you want, I'm going to finish this up, and then how about because I'm almost done. Does that work for you? Okay. So if there's an emergency, I won't be able to vote. You know, the power goes out. What am I going to do? There's not going to vote because you now have machines. Well, I'll show you right now, all the election workers are trained on how to deal with emergencies. And one of the things we do is we also have generators at every location that we can take out to any location to keep power going. Plus, if it really needs to shut down that vote center, on the mobile vote center, we make sure to only use it every day but election day. So if a vote center goes down, I can grab that mobile vote center and put it out in that location, and that location can still be a vote center. So it's our backup plan. So we're pretty proud of that. And with that, that's why I said I was getting close to the end. So he has some questions in the back, but hopefully you found this informational and helpful and having confidence in our election process, right? Thank you. Yes, sir. I think she's right there. She's got some. Yeah.
Yes.
I think it works, yeah.
Hey, my name is Fred Lopez.
Hey, Fred.
I'm currently a planning commissioner for the city of Woodland, but also a candidate for the 4th District City Council seat. My question is, you said you were hooked up to the DMV for a lot of the processing of that?
So we're not hooked up to the DMV.
With their voting, right?
So the information, no, so the way it works is the DMV collects the information and they transfer it into the Secretary of State's office. It exists on their state database. They then make sure the data is accurate, and then we can then tap into the Secretary of State. So our connection is with the Secretary of State's database.
So that brings, excuse me, that brings me to my question. As a lot of people have been exiting California, and they go to another state where you have to turn in your driver's license, does that information get relayed back to the state of California that this license is now registered in Nevada, Texas, Arizona?
So at this point,
so that person could be taken off the rolls in California?
so there's no interstate, there is a different software database. The state decided not to join that at this point. So there is one, but California doesn't connect with other states in terms of their information. We can only control what's here. But if that individual did leave, they would leave the state, let's say they left the state of California, we would send their mail to their old address. It will bounce back that they're no longer there. So they will be added to the inactive list because we've gotten a message that they're not there anymore, but they'll still stay in the system. And then after a number of election cycles, we can then remove them. We can't remove them right away, but technically they're still in the voter roll until they either inform us, because sometimes they do. People will call us and say, hey, I moved out of California, or sometimes it'll be a family member, like if they lived, this happens a lot for younger people, like they left and the parents will go, hey, Joey's no longer here, or Susie's no longer here, and they're out of state. Okay, fine, no problem. Thank you for letting us know. Just provide this information. We'll add them to the voter, inactive list, and then eventually we'll remove them. Yes,
and my
that's one
other
question.
question is, I don't know what kind of voting equipment you guys use, but how do you update that equipment? When you need to do an update on it, how is that done?
So I'm glad you asked about the update, because I do have a important story to say, and we do updates. So in fact, we just finished update the HEART system, which is our database that we use for scanning those ballots, and it's the newest versions. We can't just update it without getting the state's approval. So there's an entire certification process that the Secretary of State's office does, that whenever there's even just an update, a patch, an update of that version, it has to be reviewed thoroughly by the Secretary of State's technology research group, and it's got to pass all their tests before we get the thumbs up that we can upload it on our end. So there are those securities through the Secretary of State's office on that, and I will say, I'm so glad that we've evolved beyond that, because when I first came into office, it was 2016, we were literally using old technology that was needing to use Windows 2000. And I was lobbying in the Capitol saying, we are living on borrowed time. I had staff that was having to piece together literally computers and get parts here and there to be able to keep us not from breaking down. So I was aggressively in the Capitol lobbying to get more resources, and I'm thankful to say the state listened, and they actually gave a whole bunch of money to all of the rovers, the register of voters across the state. So we were able to upgrade our equipment. Now, what I'd really like to do, and this is as president, one of the things I want to see if I can get doing, it's maybe ambitious, but to get the state to think about it in terms of a replacement fund, technology-wise, so we don't fall behind. But we have to get them to see the value of us staying ahead of the curve on this and not being reactive but more proactive. That's a long-term goal. I don't know if, I'm only there for 2 years, I don't know if I can get all that done, but I'll try. So it's a great question because it's important.
My question was, once the state gives you the authority to do your update or a patch on your equipment, how is that done?
So you have to, we have vendors that actually provide the patch and they give us the information. So nobody can just walk in and do that. Everything on our equipment has got all these encryptions and you have to do it through the vendor. It's not even something, they will send us a special, package. I'll just call it that way because I don't want to give too much information around that, how we have to upgrade it. It's not something that they just send you a whatever patch over the internet. That's not how it works. It's much more encrypted and safety and security wise than that.
The reason I asked is, if each unit you had to take a cable and attach it to another unit that you were going to do the upload and patch, that's one way that you can avoid some of that stuff. But it's my understanding that the majority of that equipment that you say have a scanner on it, it might not be hooked up to the internet, but most of those do have a Wi-Fi connection or an app inside them.
These do not. These, no.
Have those all been removed?
These, if you were to come see firsthand, I want to invite you. When you see these systems, you're going to sit there and go, wow, these are they're not your standard machines. They have secure, to even access them, you can't just access them that you think you can. So the best way to do it is see it firsthand. There's not like Wi-Fi that these machines are connected. There's no ability to connect to the internet or have things just brought in like that. That's not possible. That's part of the security that people have to have confidence in. The best way to do it is come see it yourself.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll take you up on your offer.
Yeah, thank you, of course.
Thank you, Ms. Campos. Hi, I'm Arietta Chacos. I'm from Davis, and I'd like to know how secretaries of state confer through the election process as we see differing standards of election monitoring and processes vary from state to state. And if there are difficulties in this election, how is that resolved? Do the secretaries of state work together? Thank you.
That's a great question because the Secretary of States are beholden to the legislative bodies. So even here, the Secretary of State is simply following the legislative statutes and they are able to provide some regulations because the legislature gives them that authority. But in terms of the actual structure of how elections are run, in terms of the policies in place, that's determined by each legislative house in each state. That's why it varies so much, because depending on who's there, they will provide the parameters and the limitations that are to be put in place. And the Secretary of State is just implementing the legislature's guidance on that. Yeah, good question though, yeah.
I tried to sign up to be a volunteer at one of the voting centers, and it's actually a nightmare, and I gave up on it. I had to fill out an application, that's fine. I filled out my employment history, and then it said I needed a resume. Well, I haven't done a resume in over 8 years. So I called your office, and they said, no, you don't need a resume. Well, your agency you've hired for employment kept insisting I needed a resume, and I sort of got really irritated with them and said, forget it. And I also know a friend who went through the same thing, and she continued to be harassed by the employment agency when she said she didn't want to do it anymore. Also, you had to check what you wanted to be, which level. I mean, we just wanted to help out, but you had to say whether you wanted to be a leader of this or that or this, and it was very complex, and
okay.
All I did was want to volunteer. So.
Well, I appreciate the feedback, because I will take that back with staff and we'll have another look at exactly how, because we do have vendors that are doing the hiring for these election workers, because that's a whole arduous process in itself. So I appreciate the feedback. We'll go take a look at the way it is structured, because typically we have people that, I think I referenced a a poll worker. We call that, they are just basic poll workers that are just helping out set it up. And then there's the inspectors that are kind of the lead at each of those vote centers. So depending on people's interests, that's the way it's trying to structure, because there's some people that have experience.
Descriptions you can't figure out which is which.
Okay, well that's good feedback. I appreciate it. I can tell Armando's going to take a note on this, so we're going to follow up and do another review of that to see if we can simplify that moving forward. But thank you, appreciate that feedback. Yes, there's someone way in the back. Yes.
I just wanted to ask. I know that for a lot of offices, you have to, if you want to run as a write-in candidate, you would have to file with the county. What about offices that are outside of the jurisdiction, state level, federal level offices? How do you do write-ins for those?
So some require a broader state, that working through the state, but we do have requirements at the local level that they have to be able to fill, but it depends. If it's statewide, then it's not with us. They have to work through the Secretary of State's office and follow up. Yes.
What about federal?
The federal. So, Mondo?
So the only federal offices that have write-in candidacy opportunities is actually the President of the United States. All the federal and state running for assembly or state senate or even United States Senate, all of those were already the top two getters, and so there's no write-in options for the November election. So the primaries, the top two, they have opportunities for write-ins. In the general, there's no opportunities for write-ins because we as a collective voting body are choosing the one individual to win those positions.
And in that case, if the legislature were to ever change those rules, we would have to adapt, right? And that's as we talked about, but as of now, those are the ways those processes work. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your time.
All right, well, thank you very much. I'm Lorna. I am the current president of the Woodland League, and I'm delighted to have all of you here. Really want to give a shout out to Jesse for being kind enough to share all this useful information, to his wonderful staff, to the volunteers who work very hard on our elections as well, to the league members and our league volunteers for making this evening and many other things possible, and of course to Woodland TV for televising this for people who were not able to attend. So just wanted to let you know, as a personal experience, I was actually on the Yolo County grand jury, civil grand jury, for the 2022 election. So that gave me an opportunity as a member of a committee to actually look at every single step of the process, personally and physically. And one of our members of that committee was a self-acknowledged conspiracy theorist. And if you want to know more, well, I wouldn't say more, but it validates a lot of what Jesse has shared with you tonight. You can go to Yolo County Grand Jury Reports on Google, take you straight there to the reports, and it's a 2023, it's already posted, a report, and it talks about specifically the 2022 election. It is called Safe and Secure, ? A new look at the Yolo County Elections Office. And I also want to let you know, because the league is very, devoted to making sure that you have all of the elections information, especially about local elections, that's possible. We have a forum next Monday evening here at 6:30 p.m. where we will have candidates from 2 districts for Woodland City Council starting at 6:30. The following Thursday, the 3rd, we will have, also at 6:30 p.m. here, we will have 2 candidates for the California State Senate District 3. We will also have a unique event for the students of Woodland Community College in mid-October, where candidates will actually come on campus and be in an environment where the students can ask them questions and the like. Our colleagues at the Davis League, of whom several are already here, they have 3 forums tomorrow night. One at 6 p.m., the Board of Education Area 2 Candidate Forum. At 7 p.m., Measure Q regarding essential services. And at 7:30 p.m., City Council District 2 Candidate Forum. And then finally, we have a wonderful partnership, or we work very well with, I shouldn't say partnership, but we work extremely well with the Daily Democrat here in Woodland. So what we are working on right now is a Q&A with the 2 candidates for Yuba Community College District Trustee Area 6. That will be a question and answer opportunity to be published in the Daily Democrat. We also have 2 editorial written format where the people who are supporting, the groups that are supporting Measure P, which is the Woodland Joint Unified School District bond measure, or opposing it, can share their opinions or their responses to league-generated nonpartisan questions, as well as Measure U, which is the City of Woodland sales tax. So that's another way to be able to read what are the 2 sides saying and compare their responses against each other. So we have a lot of election information available.
Yay.
Great.
Thank you very much, and I think we're all done with today. If you haven't, we have our hashtags and our different handles. Catherine, you come up and tell them our different handles that we have. She's gonna go, okay, that's a lot. There's a lot of different handles. If you want to follow us on Facebook, we have accounts.
Yeah, if you look up Yolo Ace, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Threads.
And TikTok.
And TikTok.
Thank you, Catherine. I just want to share with you, these are all different platforms that we really try to push out information on, keep people informed, and that's a big part of who we are, just trying to provide as much information as possible. So hope you enjoyed the evening. I know it's a little past our hour, but thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And if you have any information about elections or the league or whatever that you'd like to bring home to a friend, or someone you know who's having challenges registering or would like more information, nonpartisan information about their ballot, there's lots of good stuff here as well on this table.